Before you take any behaviour personally, I simply wanted you to know this. Projection is when somebody takes how they feel about themselves and they place this onto you. So if a woman feels deeply insecure, unworthy, threatened or rejected, instead of sitting with these emotions herself and healing them, she may try to make you carry them. She might call you fake because your confidence simply triggers her insecurity, or she might call you arrogant because your self-respect reminds her of a time where she abandoned herself. Or she might make statements like accusing you of being all that, when in reality she is uncomfortable with the fact that you simply do not hate yourself. And she might constantly criticize things like your appearance, your content, your dating life, your success, your ambition, your standards, your morals, your ethics. Not because there is anything wrong with you, but because there is something about you that is pressing on a wound that she has not yet dealt with herself. And this doesn't mean that we should never self-reflect, and it doesn't mean that we should never look in the mirror and think that we're perfect. But this does mean that we should stop internalizing every single bit of nasty energy that we receive, or backhanded compliment, or demeaning comment, or any kind of other small things said towards us to minimize us or make us feel smaller. Sometimes what you're experiencing is not feedback. It's not someone just being honest, and it's not discernment. It is someone literally bleeding their insecurity all over you. And I think one of the reasons why women get so confused about female jealousy is because we expect jealousy and hatred to be really obvious in other women. We think it looks like open hatred towards us, or someone being loudly jealous. But most of the time, it doesn't look like that at all. Someone copying you, but then still criticizing you. Or someone being really overtly intrusive, taking a big interest in your life, but then still not rooting for you. Someone making small little comments designed to knock your confidence down by 5%, or someone acting intimidated by your presence around them when you haven't actually done anything wrong to them, or someone only feeling comfortable around you when you are actually down or struggling yourself, feeling heartbroken or confused or insecure or beneath them in any kind of way. And I think the last one is such a powerful truth, because some women only feel comfortable around you when they deem you to be smaller than them, when you seem to be quieter than them, when you seem to be less attractive than them, when you seem to be less confident than them, if your life looks a little messier than theirs, when your standards are seemingly lower, or when your self-esteem is just that little bit more fragile. But the moment you begin to glow differently, the moment that you start to become more secure within yourself, the moment you start carrying more peace, more femininity, more boundaries, more self-respect, more beauty, more discipline, and more self-belief, their energy changes. Not because something you did was wrong, but because your growth is forcing them to confront what they have been avoiding within themselves. But the moment you begin to glow differently, the moment that you start to become more secure within yourself, the moment you start carrying yourself with more peace, more femininity, more boundaries, more self-respect and more beauty and more discipline, more self-belief, their energy changes. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your growth is forcing them to confront what they have been avoiding within themselves. One of the biggest mistakes that women make when they sense projection or jealousy is this. They become desperate to prove that they are nice enough, they are good enough, they are lovable enough, they are harmless enough, or they are enough to be non-threatening and to be treated well. So they start to over-explain, they start to overgive, they start to dim themselves in their own light. They start to overthink every word that comes out of their mouth, or they start to make themselves appear less visible, they start to make themselves appear less attractive, or they start to make themselves appear less expressive or successful, or just less confident so that they can keep the peace. And I need you to know that you cannot heal another woman's insecurities by abandoning yourself. You cannot make someone else feel safe by making your own self feel small. And you cannot earn healthy treatment from somebody who is just committed to misreading you through a lens of their own wounds. You definitely do not need to comfort yourself by being digestible to people that just feel threatened by your existence and your light. If another woman has already decided that your confidence is arrogance, that your boundaries are attitude, that your beauty is somehow competition, or that your success is showing off, or your peace is something to resent, then there is a very good chance that no amount of explaining yourself is going to fix that. And that is where emotional maturity does come to play. Because part of becoming a grounded woman is learning how to say, I do not need to audition for any kind of safe treatment. I do not need to convince someone to see clearly if they are committed to seeing me through a distorted lens. And I do not need to shrink myself down to make another woman feel more comfortable. So what do you actually do when you are dealing with jealous women or women projecting onto you? Well, my first point would be that you have to name it privately before you actually have a public reaction to it. So just before you spiral, ask yourself, is it genuinely about me, or is it just somebody else's insecurity spilling onto me? Do I genuinely need to take this advice on board? Is this constructive feedback, or is it just a pattern of subtle stability, resentment, comparison, and quite frankly, just disrespect? And how do I feel around this person consistently? Expanded and safe, or tense and drained? You don't need to announce your diagnosis of them. You don't need to say, are you jealous of me? And actually go up to them and ask the question. In fact, this often creates more chaos than peace itself. But privately, you need to be honest with yourself about what you're actually dealing with. Because once you can actually name the energy, you stop being controlled by the confusion inside of your own head about it. And my second point then would be that you stop over-explaining yourself to people who just enjoy misunderstanding you. If somebody is committed to reading you in a bad faith, over-explaining usually doesn't save you. It just drains you. Not every comment needs a defense. Not every coldness needs to be chased. And not every weird shift in energy needs any kind of confrontation. Not every occasion deserves a long paragraph. sometimes the most powerful thing that you can do is simply just to detach and become quieter and cleverer and just less available to the absolute nonsense that you're dealing with. And this doesn't mean that you become positive, it doesn't mean that you become weak, it just means that you become more self-contained, and it means that you understand your energy is just precious to you, and that not everyone does actually deserve unlimited access to it. And then my third point would be to just protect your access and like not just your image and how you're being seen. A lot of women are just solely focused on how do I make sure that like she doesn't dislike me in this social situation, but I think like a better question to ask yourself really is like, why does this person still have so much access to me if their energy just repeatedly makes me just feel really unsafe and uncomfortable and competitive and draining, or just like subtly cruel. Sometimes the answer is not to have like one big dramatic fallout, but instead the answer is to just like quietly reduce access. And this just means handing over less personal information and just being less emotionally available and having less emotional intimacy with this specific person, just less closeness, more distance, less front row access to your plans, to your wins, to your vulnerabilities, to your relationship, to your dreams, and like, you know, things like your weaknesses or your insecurities. Not everybody deserves full access to you, and I think women really need to normalize that. Distance is not always punishment, sometimes it is just wisdom. Don't perform humility like just because someone is like uncomfortable with how confident you come across. That one is like really important. If you've worked to become really secure and healed and self-respecting and beautiful and disciplined and successful and emotionally grounded, you do not need to apologize for that. You do not need to speak badly about yourself just so that other people can relax. You do not need to pretend that like you don't know your own beauty, and you do not need to downplay your intelligence or your work ethic or your competence or your boundaries or your standards or your accomplishments just to avoid being labelled as something like too much, which is super common, unfortunately. A woman who is truly secure within herself does not need to become less in order to make someone else feel okay. So if your confidence is upsetting to someone else who did benefit from the version of you that was keeping yourself smaller, then this is not always your burden to carry. So stay classy, but don't stay accessible to everyone. I really do believe in being classy, I really do, but I don't think that every difficult woman like needs a speech. I don't think that every dramatic person needs to be given attention or deserves like your rage or your reaction. And I do not think that you need to be cruel just because someone else is acting from insecurity. But being classy does not mean being like endlessly available for disrespect. It does not mean tolerating passive aggression forever, and it does not mean continuing to pour into a woman who repeatedly has shown that like she's just competing with you, like she's not on your team, and who's mocking you or undermining you or trying to like puncture your confidence. It does not mean allowing yourself to be emotionally picked at, like just because you want to be the bigger person. Sometimes being the bigger person, which is just looking like having composure, and sometimes it does look like just leaving. And I do want to say this because I feel like sometimes people talk about this topic in a bad way. or a cold way, but sometimes it does hurt when another woman is actually like really jealous of you, especially if you admired her, especially if you were actually kind towards her, especially if you genuinely wanted a friendship, sisterhood, or like a feeling of safety, especially if you have already experienced the feeling of like being excluded in the past or misunderstood or like targeted or bullied by women before. So it can hurt because it just like taps into that wound that already exists on the inside, and it can make you question yourself, and it can make you want to like retreat into yourself, and it can make you feel like unsafe being seen, and it can make you feel like every room is political, or like every interaction is really loaded. So if you've ever felt wounded by this like type of treatment that you've received, then I just wanted to say like I'm really sorry, and that it does make sense. But your healing cannot be to harden into someone you are not, and your healing cannot be to become paranoid now of all other women, and your healing cannot be to like falsely assume now that every other woman hates you, and your healing most definitely cannot be to dim your own light, your own confidence, your own intelligence, and your own ambition, and your own confidence, and your own joy, just to reduce the risk of like being projected onto again. The answer is not self-erasure. The answer is having stronger discernment, and the answer is learning how, like, who is safe, and who can actually celebrate you around you, like without competing with you, and learning who can like hold your light without trying to extinguish it, and learning how to build up your life around women who are emotionally mature enough to be inspired by your growth, rather than like threatened by it. So ultimately, I think the conversation is bigger than just like, how do I deal with jealous women? I think the deeper question we have to ask ourselves really is, who do I become with other people, like when they project onto me? Do I become like emotionally reactive? Do I become bitter? Do I become a petty person? Like, do I become someone who's like obsessed with trying to prove myself? Do I start like shrinking myself? Do I abandon myself? Do I become hard and suspicious and like defensive with everyone after these experiences? Or do I become someone who just has more discernment and more boundaries, and who's just more emotionally intelligent, and more anchored now in who I am? Because there is a version of womanhood that actually says like, I can be soft without being naive, and I can be kind without being easy to access, and I can be feminine without being fragile, and I can be compassionate without caring what like others like think of me. And I can be compassionate without like carrying what doesn't belong to me, and I can understand that someone is projecting from a place of their own pain or hurt, and still refuse to like let that pain have any access to like me or my nervous system, my confidence, my peace, and my self-worth. And that to me is like the real power. Not proving them wrong at all, or like trying to humiliate them back, or not winning some like invisible competition that's just made up in your head, but just remaining like deeply rooted in yourself. And so if you have been dealing with anything like jealousy or projection, or like just bad or weird energy, or feeling like another woman just keeps trying to make you carry her insecurity, or anything similar to this, then I just really hope this video does help you and reminds you of like something really important, which is that you do not need to betray yourself to keep the peace, and you do not need to internalize every projection that lands near you. Sometimes the most powerful thing that you can actually do for yourself is to simply just stay grounded in your own energy, to protect your own peace, to move with discernment, to let other people's unresolved wounds just remain theirs, as it's their responsibility to heal. And if this video did resonate with you, then I would really love for you to leave a comment and just let me know what you thought of it. Let me know your thoughts, and especially if you have ever experienced this kind of projection from another woman, and how you have learnt to deal with it, because I think we all have at some point. And if you would like to see more videos around topics like female confidence or self-worth or becoming a woman who is deeply grounded in herself, then please do consider subscribing to my channel, because I'd love to have you here. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!